guys, today's story time with Curtis is a story of back when I was 17 years old, so roughly about, I don't know what, 130 years ago or so. But at the time I lived in California, a smallish town called Vacaville. It's right between Sacramento and San Francisco. And at that time I was real heavy into boxing, was working out every day. Not the incredible fat blob you see before you nowadays. I was actually in pretty good shape back then. But anyway, most of my adult life I've worked out like a maniac. I like working out. So all that aside, that's was my gym. That's where I worked out. And on this particular day, I went in. I was just going to grab a quick workout. I wanted to go in, hit the bag a little bit, do some weightlifting, and go home. I had some other stuff to do. It was late December. It was actually, I can tell you exactly, and I'll tell you why I'm able to remember the date in a little bit. It was December 29th, 1978. And so anyway, this gym that I worked out in was huge. It's a huge place. It was the boys club in Vacaville. And as a matter of fact, we have at least one person that I know of here at the channel that lives in Vacaville. And Christian, I haven't seen you in the comment section too much recently, but if you happen to see this video, tell me, is that gym still there? I'm just curious. It's right on the side of the hill. I don't remember the name of the street, but it was on the side of the hill, and you went up, down the other side. When you got down the other side, the Wendy's was right there to your right. Because if I have to remember something from 100 years ago, it's going to be where the food is. That's what's going to stick. But anyway, that was my gym, and I was in there to work out this day. Now, the guy who ran the gym, who's regular, was the regular administrator of the gym. His name was Tom Thompson. He had just taken over a few months prior. It used to be a guy named Al Williams. But Tom and I were good friends, good guy. We used to hang out a lot. But when Tom would be off, his days off, or if he'd take time off, the guy that would replace him, his name was Milton. Now, Tom was supposed to be working this day, and this is important to the story. I'll tell you why later. Tom was supposed to be working this day, but he decided he wanted to go deep sea fishing. Like I said, we weren't far from the coast. So he called out. So Milton came in to run the gym that day. Now I'm in there, just want to get my workout, get out of there. And I need to explain that, again, this gym was huge. So we used to play football right inside the gym. And we would play it on, there was big, long lines of wrestling mats. And we would play on the wrestling mats. And again, this day I wanted to get in and get out, and the guys were starting a football game, and a couple of them come over to me and say, hey, Rusty, come on, play some football with us. And I'm like, nah, I want to get going. I got stuff to do. No, come on. And they're, oh, we need one more. We got to even it up, blah, blah, blah. Come on, just play for a little while. So I'm like, all right, fine, I'll play. Now, here's the key. When Tom was running the gym, if Tom was in, the rule was supposed to be at the boys club, if you're on the wrestling match, you took off your shoes. Tom said that was stupid. They're made for sneakers. If you're wearing sneakers, you don't have to take off your shoes. Milton, like I say, he was the substitute. He was a good guy. He was the substitute, though, and he wanted to do everything by the rules. So when Milton was there, you had to take off your shoes. So I said, okay, I'll play football for a little bit. Take off my shoes, get on, we start playing. Well, we'd been playing for a little while on there, and the way we would play is the edges of the mats were out of bounds. So I was on defense, and kid throws a pass. Kid catches it, he's running down the side of the mats, and I go diving to push him out of bounds. Well, when I did, I dove through, got my hands on him, pushed him off the edge of the mat, and when I landed, I felt my foot hit the mat, and I heard a big crack. Now, I thought it was, how your knuckles will crack really hard sometimes. That's what I thought it was. It's like, ooh, that might be uncomfortable because I just cracked the knuckle in my big toe really bad. So I get up, and I start to go to run back, and I look down, I still had socks on, and I could see something wobbling, just dangling in my sock. And it took a second for it to sink in, and when it did, I went, and Milton had just come out, I still remember, he had just come out of the equipment room. His sons were there with him at the time. He had 2 or 3 little boys, I don't remember. His sons had just come out with him. I looked down, and I looked up, and I said, Milton, I just broke my fucking toe off. And now his reaction was great because the sense of humor in this gym overall, everybody was always with racial type humor. I was Snow White and this because I was in the vast minority. There weren't that many white guys there. So Milton and I were always trading barbs about race and stuff like that. So I'm yelling, Milton, I just broke my fucking toe off. And he's looking at me like, how is that funny? I don't get it. That's not, it's nothing to do with basketball or large penises. I don't get it. And I'm like, no. And I started hopping. They had a leg extension machine, so something that I could sit on. I start hopping towards it. I go, no, Milton, I broke my fucking toe off. And he looks down at my socks, and he sees the blood running, and he sees it wiggling, and he I mean, again, Milton was a black guy. He went white, completely white. He's just like, oh, he goes, what do I do? And now my cousins were there too. My little cousins, well, little, they ranged, in that time they probably ranged in age from like 9 to 14. They start yelling, call the paramedics. So Milton runs in, he calls the paramedics. I sit down on the leg extension machine. Everybody's gathered around me. It's all right. It's all right. Now, the funny thing was, I wasn't in pain. It really didn't hurt that much. I mean, I shouldn't say I wasn't in pain. I could feel it. But it wasn't severe, dire pain at all. So I'm sitting there waiting, and everybody's like all concerned about me. And I'm like, you know, it's all right. I assume it's all right. I'm not going to bleed to death. So the paramedics got there pretty quick. Well, they come running in. 2 paramedics. 2 guys kneel down. They start cutting my sock off. Now, while they're doing it, a woman that was with them, she's standing behind me while I'm sitting on the bench, and she's covering my eyes. And it was pissing me off, and I'm like, stop doing that. Don't put your hand on my face. And she goes, you can't look. You're going to go into shock. And again, it's not a tough guy thing or anything. Just things like that really don't stress me out that much. You know, if one of my kids is bleeding, that's different. If I'm bleeding, it doesn't really bother me. Well, you guys have seen enough of the wrestling videos. You know that. But anyway, so I kept telling her, I said, stop covering my eyes. She said, I have to. You're going to see what happened and you're going to go into shock. I'm like, okay, fine. So they cut it off. They bandage it all up, get me in the ambulance, and off we go to the hospital. So we get down to the hospital. They have to call in a bone specialist and everything. And I wanted to see what I had done. So finally, at one point, I was left alone in this little emergency room triage like area they had. It was all wrapped up and everything. So I look around and I was like, psh, 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 and I unwrapped it. I wanted to see what I did. And my toe came up like this, and it had just snapped right off, right below this knuckle here. So there was a little piece of skin just holding the toe on as it dangled off to the side, and the bone was sticking up straight through. And it freaked me out because the bone was gray. I didn't know I always thought bones were white. You know, I'd seen skeletons and shit before. So the doctor, and stupid shit stays with you. I still remember his name was Dr. Bunya. Don't know why that stuck with me, but Dr. Bunya comes in. He was the bone specialist, and first thing I asked him was like, Doc, am I okay? Are my bones supposed to be gray? And he goes, oh, you've been peeking, huh? I said, yeah, I've been peeking. I said, I'm not worried about that. Am I fucking rotting or something? He goes, no. He says, you know, the bones you see on a skeleton or something hanging in a classroom, they're oxidized. That turns them white. He goes, no, when they're in your body, they're gray. You're fine. So he told me, he said, listen, he said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to try and put it back together with a pin. He said, I'm going to put the bone back in. He's going to drill a hole in the top of my toe and then stick a pin down right through the joint to hold it in place. I'll be in a cast for 8 weeks, then he'll pull the pin out. He said, you've got a 50-50 chance of keeping the toe. He said, I'll be right up front with you. He said, when you come out of surgery, you may still have it, you may not. He said, depends on how it goes. You have to remember, this is 1978 medicine, not not the current stuff we have today. That's, you know, they cured things with leeches back then is what I'm trying to say. But I was like, okay, whatever. And I remember telling him, I said, listen, there's a college football game on I want to see tonight. Will I be done in time? He goes, you're not going to want to watch any college football later. He said, you're going to be sedated. You're going to need a night catch up. I said, I want to see that game. He's like, well, whatever. Yes, you'll be out. He said, but you won't be ready to see it. Well, what I didn't know at the time, and I've learned since, my body doesn't respond well to Novocaine or any type. When they try and put me under, anytime I've been put under for any type of operation, they have to hit me with a lot more than I ever imagined, including this time. So the anesthesiologist, I remember being in the operating room, and they got the mask on me. I feel the anesthesia coming into my face, and the Dr. Bunya asked him like 3 times, is he ready? Is he done? Is he ready? And the 3rd time he says, are we ready to go? And the anesthesiologist says, no, doctor, he's not ready yet. He goes, well, hit him. And then I felt in my face, and I went out. But I woke back up again, still in the operating room. Fortunately, they were finishing up. They were pulling that tube. I got to enjoy them pulling that fucking tube out of my nose that they put down into your, I don't know, into your lungs or wherever the fuck it goes. So I got to enjoy that on the way out because anesthesia and Novocaine, I found out the same thing. They don't really work on me. I always have to have way more than I'm supposed to just to be knocked out. So anyway, they get done, wheel me back to my room. I was up and watching that game. That game, for any, it won't mean much to most of you, it was Ohio State versus Clemson on December 29th, 1978. In college football, it's a day that lives in infamy because Woody Hayes was the long-term, much-loved Ohio State football head coach, and on this day, he snapped during this game, and he punched the kid from Clemson and destroyed his career. He was done after that and ruined his legacy. And I watched it in my hospital bed. Now, why it was important that Milton happened to be there instead of Tom, the doctor said what happened, how I broke it off, was when I dove to push that kid out of bounds, my toe basically posted, because wrestling mat, it has a little bit of give, posted down into the mat just enough to stick there, and my body weight folded over on it and just snapped it off. Had I been wearing sneakers, he said you wouldn't have been hurt at all. It would have been nothing. It just would have rolled with your sneaker and you'd have gone out and played. So basically, Tom having to go deep sea fishing broke my fucking toe off. So needless to say, I never let him hear the end of that until I left. But Tom was like a really, really big, powerful dude. So I would rag him about it, but only so far, because then he would beat me up. But then I would still rag him about it more. So to this day, you know, the scar's still there. The toe's a little bigger than it should be. You can still see a little bit of the indentation from where they had to drill the hole. Oh, and that was the other part. This Dr. Bunyak kept telling me the worst part is yet to come. Worst part's yet to come. You've experienced nothing as bad as the pain of when I have to pull this pin out. Because the pin was down to the top of my toe and it had a little loop on the top of it. And 8 weeks later, when I was getting out of the cast and everything, he has to pull the pin out. He said it's going to have, you know, the bone is going to grow to it. It's going to hurt like hell. So I spent 8 weeks dreading that. Dreading it. So we finally get there. We're in his office. He says, okay. He says, he had me lay back on the table. He said, I want you to take your hands, grab onto the table, hold tight. He says, it's going to come out. And I'm like, yeah, just do it. And I felt like a rush of air on the end of my toe. And I look, and he's standing there with the pin. I said, that's it? He goes, yeah. He said, I'm shocked. He said, the bone healed right around it. It didn't grab onto it. I said, you asshole. I've spent 8 weeks pissing myself, waiting for this moment, how bad that was going to hurt, and I didn't even feel it come out. He goes, are you complaining? I'll put the fucking thing back in and we'll do it again. I don't know if he said fucking, but that's how I remember it in my head. But yeah, so I spent the 8 weeks dreading that, and I got lucky enough to where it didn't, the bone didn't grab the pin at all. It came right out. And I assume she still has it. My mom lives in North Carolina. She kept the pin. Why, I couldn't tell you, but I remember she's got old photo albums, the kind where you put the pictures on and the clingy, clear plastic comes over the top of the pictures. She has the pin in a photo album somewhere. She kept it. But that's the story of my removable toe. The doctor said at the time, he said, it'll never take another operation. If you injure that toe again, it's gone. And I've never had too much trouble with it. Some pain here or there, but over the last few years, now whenever it gets cold or damp, the arthritis is really, it's like, it throbs in there. But I guess all things considered, it could have been a lot worse. But what really pisses me off, everybody remembers that day for Woody Hayes, and you guys can look it up on YouTube. I'm sure it's there. Just put Woody Hayes punches kid or Woody Hayes punches Clemson player. It'll be there. But everybody remembers that day. It lives in infamy because Woody Hayes punched a kid. I broke my fucking toe off. Where's all the video and recognition for that? That's kind of a cool, I'm going to say it. It's kind of a cool feat. I told the whole story to get to that punchline.